morning, Matt.
Rick, what's going on? Welcome back.
Thank you. What do you mean? Where'd I go?
Just we haven't seen you in a while. We've been training up the
That's
franchisees.
right. Well, when you guys work, I tend to disappear because I don't know what to do.
That's true. You kind of can't
come to the office and everybody's
everybody.
busy working, and they're like, "Can you leave me alone?" I'm like, "Oh, I'll just go home." So I go find other people that
It is
are,
quite funny watching you go from office to office.
Yeah, trying to like
don't make eye contact. Don't make eye contact
don't
with
look
them.
at them. Don't look at them. We have glass offices, by the way. Those of you guys are here, and most people just want me to leave them alone. And I'm thinking I'm here to touch lives and uplift, and it's like, listen, you're just slowing me down.
We're just trying to work hard to make you proud, man.
Whatever. All right, on that note, let's do some jokes. What you got for me today, Matty?
What did the police officer say to his belly button? On a vest.
You are on the vest. I like it. Oh, gosh. You know David Hasselhoff, right? You know who that is?
Yeah.
Knight Rider.
Yes.
You know he just calls himself Hoff, right?
He does?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah?
It's less of a hassle. And there you go. It's a what is it here, Monday? Yeah, it's a Monday morning. So this won't come out for a few weeks, but just want you guys to know this is what goes down on a Monday morning in Hot Atlanta.
Hot Atlanta.
At headquarters of Alloy. And also, you know what else goes down here, Matt? We retain clients here.
Yeah. You know how we do that?
I do not, actually. As you can imagine, I have completely out of touch with my business and how it works. No, I do know how we do it. Of course. I've only been at it for 30 years. But yeah, we have some crazy retention. So it's something that is our claim to fame. It's one of the things that we, it's a great sales tool for us to tell people that they can actually be in the fitness business. They can sell their gym.
Mm-hmm.
Flurry of activity up front. And then once you get rolling, we have our claimed 97% retention in our franchise documents, and so you just get to take care of people, which is a very novel idea. I mean, you don't have to just sell and churn all the time. You get to build a real community, and that keeps people around. And so today we're going to talk about 3 different techniques that we use that you might not think about that are very critical to client retention. Some of them are intuitive, but when I work and market with other clubs, and for the last 15 years in licensing, I thought they were intuitive, but maybe some were not. So those are things we're going to discuss today is 3 ways to increase your retention. And I feel like that's something that we're qualified to speak on because we're really good at it.
For sure. Just do it. You ready?
I'm so ready.
So the first one is setting the right expectation.
I think if you don't set the expectation, and what we mean by that is literally the sales process, essentially. Mm-hmm. So the first time that you meet with someone, and I'll even take it a step further, Matt, and say the first time that you're, texting with someone or you have them on the phone, like remember you're a big customer experience guy. So you know that the customer experience starts from the time they see your ad all the way till they've been here for 3 years.
Yes.
I mean, the whole time it's customer experience. And so certainly in the sales process, meaning how you're communicating with them early on, and then once you get them into your facility, how you induct them into your system.
I'm going to change it right away from this expectation to we're laying the right foundation.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah, I'm just totally, I don't like your notes.
Wow. Okay, that's fine. Foundations it is. So laying a foundation. And it's a great way to put it, because if you don't lay the right foundation, you're sort of setting them up. I'm still going to go with expectations. I'm just going to keep saying it. Listen, if you don't give them the right expectations, if you say something silly in the induction to get the sale and then you can't meet that expectation, like if you say that would be like me selling a franchise to someone and saying, you know what, it's going to be easy. It's very easy to be an entrepreneur. I've done it for 30 years. I'm not Mark Zuckerberg. I've fed my family and made a lot of money doing it. You can too. And I think a lot of us feel that way, and we feel that way about weight loss, like actual client goals. But it's not that easy. And I think if you undersell the amount of work that needs to be done, or kind of what the expectations are, how long it's going to take, it might sound great at the time, and you may feel like it's moving the needle and getting that person to say yes. The problem is it's going to increase your churn on the back end if you set up unrealistic expectations. Now, sure. I know you can give us some examples. You sat in that seat for, 5-6 years, right, as the director. Yeah. So maybe longer.
Setting expectations, laying a foundation, building value, whatever you want to do. We have, as we talked about many times, a scripted starting point session is what we call it, right? But the whole point of that is to really dig in and find out, what that client needs. And from that point, that's where we start building value and laying out what is going to be expected of them and how we're going to help them. Or we're not just selling workouts and things like that.
Right.
To me, that's the difference. Because if you start them out the other way, where it's just like, oh, you just come in to work out, you're going to lose weight. It's like, no, you have to make sure they understand what's going to be expected of them and why what we're doing is valuable and going to help them along the way.
Right. Yeah, it's getting that early buy-in to the program. And I guess the most important word that you mentioned there was why. Mm-hmm. Why are they there? And how does what we offer as a solution apply to their particular problem that we're solving for them? Whether it's pain, moving better, weight loss, self-confidence, all of the above, whatever that is. And so you need to make sure that you dig in to lay that foundation, to your point, and set the right expectations so that again, it also will help you sort of, you bring in on the right type of customer, if that makes sense. You're basically setting them up for success long term. You're setting expectations. You're convincing them that you've got the thing, right, to solve their problem, but you do it in a realistic way so that you're not creating some false narrative of a timeline or an effort, that's disconnected from what's really going to happen when they're there. And I think it's easy for anyone listening to this, certainly if you're in the fitness space, to understand if you said, hey, I'm going to sell you that's why we don't like these challenges, like a 6-week or a 12-week challenge, right? Because what the expectation of what's going to happen in that time is pretty outlandish. And I mean, if it doesn't happen, you're going to lose the customer, right? And so it's not about like whether or not you have to give them a refund or not. It's like, are they going to be there 3 years later? That's our main play. So I think if anybody, again, is qualified to speak about retention long-term, it would be us. And we're big on relationship building and telling people the truth from the start.
Right.
And it's probably a breath of fresh air. I mean, imagine if you sat down with someone who was seemingly selling you something, especially in an industry like fitness where maybe the big box clubs have tainted a lot of the people that are in our age category because they've been to clubs before. And they might have bought a membership that they knew they weren't going to use, and maybe there was some trickery or like some kind of like bait and switchy language, or like sign up for this challenge and this and that, and they feel like they were burned, right? So if they sit down with you and you're very honest with them and you peel the onion, and you figure out why they're there, and you tell them the truth, and trust is
speak to that.
Well, yeah, and you just say, well, listen, that's not true what you heard before. That is not how this works. This is going to be some work. Now, we will get you there, and we're going to make sure you're accountable. Right. And if you don't show up, I'm going to call you and find out why. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to do this 4-letter thing, right? You're going to have to do this word.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely are dispelling some of those myths and those belief systems they may have, right? Because people are all over the place. I think that what we do really well, and you've spoke on this before, is we meet people where they're at, and just roll back. Personal training. That we all know it's really good. Strength training, we all know there's 1,000,001 benefits. But the goal, again, is to sit down and find how those benefits match up to what you need and what you want. So then you're building the value, and that's what keeps you motivated and keep you staying there, right? I'd say, sell me personal training. You could tell me everything there is about it, but like at the end of the day, like that doesn't hit me where I want to improve my golf swing.
Well, it almost goes back to we had a sales podcast where it was like too much talking was one of the ways to lose a sale,
right? Because
you just tell about your stuff, but you don't learn what the problem is that person has, so you can then explain what your solution does to solve their problem.
Exactly.
But I think same thing here, and I know we're sort of talking around it, but let me give an example of where I've seen it go sideways. Maybe that'll help. I've seen people sit down and sell personal training and make outlandish claims that I would say scientifically are impossible to back up. Like, let's say you've got someone there and they have shoulder pain. And they're like, yeah, I don't really, I had my rotator cuff surgery, and then my shoulder's still kind of sore. And, I can't, hurts when I push weights over my head. Right. Well, the appropriate response to that would be what?
What did you do to hurt your shoulder?
No, they already told you they had surgery.
I wouldn't even listen to you. What'd you say?
Matt, you still here? No. Well, you would say, listen, we're going to work around that. Like, there's no reason we're not going to do any exercises that hurt you. You don't have to do those things to help you reach your goals, right? But what I've heard people say that's a mistake is like, oh, we'll fix that. Oh, we'll get you there. We're going to help you with that.
Oh, right,
we'll get you in that. You'll be able to do those things pain free, no worries. And the expectation is then like, oh, great, like my shoulder's never going to hurt anymore ever. It's like, well, that's silly. Of course it is. It's like, you're 50 something years old. You've had shoulder surgery. You play tennis or pickleball or something, of course it's going to bother you every now and then. But you know what? We're not going to hurt you. If anything, we're going to do some things that are going to make it stronger, and it might make it hurt less. Right.
Well, we can work around that. Make sure you're good. There's plenty of other things we can work on. We'll also help you kind of maybe find somebody to take a look at that, make sure we can get
right. We'll refer you out if it is in pain. Exactly. But we're not here to fix pain and to set up an expectation that, oh yeah, no, we'll fix that. Oh, that'll be, oh, Carl, I do that all the time. Like, oh, your back, you got a bad back? Oh yeah, we'll fix that straight up. We'll get you straight away. Because what will happen is the expectation is I'm going to have no back pain at all. And then 3 months down the road, when they, pick up something in the garage and they have a back spasm, then this doesn't work for me. It's like, well, that should never have been the expectation. So you just have to be really careful with timeframes, and things that you can actually accomplish from the seat that you're in as a personal trainer. I mean, you can move mountains, but are limitations to that at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. All right, well, that's expectations. We said a lot, walked around over that one.
We could have just said that and moved on, but we don't do it that way, you guys. We're dragging this out for you.
So that usually happens right in that starting point session or just beginning of the sales process, right? We're starting first time we talk to you. The next thing is poles in the ground.
Yeah, so think about it this way. This is the way I've heard it described that I really liked. So if you think about a power line, and there are poles that hold up the power lines, right? Again, think about in the country where they're not buried in the ground. And so what happens between the power lines is that there'll be a sag, right? I mean, it doesn't just go, it's not so taut that it's just a straight line like a tightrope. It typically sags down a bit between each pole. And I want you to think of the poles in the ground as the support system that you're giving to customers, or maybe a positive uplift, a customer experience that's a plus, right? And they are the power line. And so what happens if you've got customers, especially as long as we keep them for 3 years, is that you will put a pole in the ground in 1,000,001 ways. Maybe it can be something as simple, Matt, as saying like, hey, Matt, you did a great job today. Do you realize that when you first started coming in here, you could only do 2 push-ups, and today you did 12, and you blew through them like it was nothing, and your form was perfect. Did it hurt your shoulder? No. Great, man. You're doing awesome. That's a pole in the ground for that individual, right? Yep. And so what will happen, though, is if you're not putting those in the ground periodically, no matter how the results are for the customer or whatever those things are, if you're not recognizing them or giving them positive feedback or just any positive experience they can have in your business, they're going to continue to sag down, and they'll eventually just, they'll reach trough in their customer experience. So the goal is to put poles in the ground often so you never let them get too low, because in that low trough is where you're at risk of losing someone, right? Mm-hmm. So some other examples, Matt, I know you've sat in the seat, whether it's direct or out on the floor, like what are some mechanisms that we have in place? Yeah, what was it?
I literally walked out, and there's a client that's coming forever, an older gentleman. I was like, hey, Michael, how you doing, man? You been playing golf? And he's like, yeah. I was like, you feeling good? Yeah, my knees and my back are hurting. And, I was like, well, man, it's so good that you continue to work out. Man, imagine what you feel like if you didn't get, weren't working out. Would you even be playing golf? It's like, I know you probably even have some buddies that are actually not able to. He's like, man, yeah, you're right.
Right.
Totally perked right back up and went back to slamming those ropes.
Well, yeah. And you think about, because it could have gone the other way.
Right.
Like somehow in his mind, there might have been an expectation that, well, I exercise twice a week, even though I'm in my 70s, I should have no pain after playing, 36 holes of golf over the weekend. But the reality is what you actually told him. Well, imagine if you didn't work out, how bad it would be. Right. You probably have friends that aren't even able to play golf because they hurt, right? And he's like, oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, thanks. So, yeah, you're right, man. I'm going to get in here and get this done. Mm-hmm. That's a pole in the ground. There's 1,000,001 ways to do it. A lot of the soft stuff that we do, and go back and listen to our podcast on the 7 core tenets of how to run a session, all those are poles in the ground. So you can build these in your business, whether you're in training or a different kind of business. You can put poles in the ground in 1,000,000 different ways. It can be just using someone's name when they come in. It can be explaining the exercise through their lens of why they're doing it, so it makes them feel good that they're doing like it. Maybe it's a very difficult exercise for them, and you're like, listen, you remember your goal of blah, blah, blah? And they're like, yeah, this is the perfect exercise for that. You just got to focus a little bit. You're going to get through this, right?
Right.
Great. One of the high points we've talked about is accomplishing or, completing a difficult workout.
Mm-hmm.
That's for any health club member, right? So certainly in a personal training place, we can facilitate that. Again, explaining the exercise through an aesthetic goal, right? So-and-so wants her glutes to be tighter. It's like, well, explain that to her. Let her know that exercise is actually doing that exact thing that she wants, or that piece of fat on the back of the arm, or whatever those things are that we as coaches are like, oh, you don't need to be worried about that. It's like, well, you can still make someone feel good Or it could literally just be touch, like we talk about. Everybody gets touched. It's like slap them on the shoulder. I mean, I told you about the study that a buddy of ours that's a physician told me that they learned, where if you touch a patient even like on the arm or whatever during an office visit, that the perceived time with you goes up. Spent time goes up by 20%. So it's like, if we do that to all of our customers, whether they know it or not, it's putting a pole in the ground, right? And so if you're doing that often enough and you're not taking your customers for granted, that's what we're basically saying,
Sure.
then you're going to keep them a lot longer. So think about any way to give people a positive experience. And we've got these baked right into the way that we train people.
Yep.
Again, find a positive for you, find a win for every customer in every workout, right? It could be you saw them struggling that day and they were having an off, and maybe they've gained some weight because they're stressed and they're not sleeping well and their nutrition's wacky, and you just feel it in that session that they're like, ugh, So afterwards, you shoot them a private text. We've got that mechanism as well. It's like, hey, listen, I know you're struggling right now, but stick with it. You've been through this before. We got this. Right. Like, I'm here for you if you need me. Just do the 3 things we talked about during the session today. You're going to be fine.
Basically, you're just always selling what we do.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Them,
That's a good way.
Always looking for ways to keep them motivated. I mean, you're their coach. That's what we're doing. I mean, we're always selling everything all the time, but that's what it is.
Yeah,
you're selling them me on like, oh, yep, I'm right. This is the process. Keep doing this. Keep me juiced up, right?
Yep. But the thing is, and what you said, Matt, was interesting. The story that you had with Steve, I think, was that you have to put on a set of lenses when you're in your business, because those conversations, put it this way, the opportunity to have those conversations is multiple times a day. There's always an opportunity to put that next pole in the ground, but you have to be not in your own head about what's going on at home or your software or the one customer that's moving or whatever those things are. You've got to be fully present at all times and understand the person standing in front of you at that moment is the most important person in the world. And what could I do to uplift this person in any way, shape, or form, right? And if you just approach your business with that lens on it, there's a million opportunities. We can't give you all of them because it's like I could walk out onto our floor now and probably find 4 or 5 opportunities to uplift people. Sure. In random ways, right? Tell them a joke. Hey, how's this? How are you? How's your kids? Maybe you ask them a personal question that they find surprising that you even knew about them. There's so many ways to put these poles on the ground, you guys. But the thing is, put on your set of lenses and approach your business in that way and think of it like I'm going to keep them supported, I'm not going to let them get too far apart and you'll be good. I mean, that's it. All this stuff is so simple. But it's like weight loss. It's simple, but it's not easy, Yeah,
you don't want a bunch of saggy lines out there.
I don't like saggy lines, Matt. You know that.
All right. Going on number 3. This one kind of define common ground or community.
This speaks to your ability to facilitate a community in your gym.
Yeah.
I'll give you a story. I used to tell this a lot. When we first, a million years ago, moved our one-on-one training to what we call small group training, which is what the whole franchise is based on now. The beauty of it is it's less expensive for the consumer, right? So they're paying a third typically of what they would pay for a one-on-one training session. And so you get the benefit of one-on-one from a programming standpoint, but you also get the benefit of 6 people, right? So it's like there's some benefit of what happens in a group setting, but it doesn't happen by accident. And what we mean by building that community is that you have to go out of your way to do it. So the story that I would always tell, because when we were first doing it, we were one of the first gyms or what have you to move one-on-one to small group. And a lot of the people I was speaking to were gym owners, and they were like, oh no, and they had the same things that I were saying, 3 years ago, which is like, oh, my clients will never do that. Oh, they want one-on-one attention. I have to get them a towel and I have to stretch them at the end. And all the things that they thought were the most important. And then they would say, well, do you have to put people that are the same, here's an example, put people that are the same fitness level in the same session? And I would say no. And it works if you don't. You can have a very fit individual who you wouldn't think would want to work with someone who is maybe extremely overweight, right? Who's not very fit in the same session. And so, but you have to understand how to facilitate that, right? You have to understand how to build community. It doesn't happen by accident. And so again, we've got a lot of this stuff baked into our systems, but this particular story is, a time when there was a lady who came in and she was extremely overweight and she was low self-confidence. I met with her the first time she was in, so I knew that. And then she was working out in a group, and the rest of the group was really fit. And one of the ladies was like super fit, doing weighted pull-ups and everything, and looked it as well. Like, it's this really attractive lady who's really fit. And, you know, I used to tell the story almost as a joke where I'm sure the lady who was new to the gym, right, who was really not fit, would look at her and think, I bet she eats whatever she wants. She is so blessed, right? And I hate that skinny bitch. You know, that used to be the joking story. So I always called it skinny bitch, right? And it's like, because she does whatever she wants. And then maybe there's some thought that the girl that's in great shape is judging me for my fitness. And I think that's probably a common, like, whether people would admit it or not. Listen, the bitch is a derogatory term, but you get where I'm going. Just use that for shock value. But it was more like, listen, I don't feel great being here. I'm not a gym person. You know, I don't fit the mold. That's like a gym person over there. They probably wonder what I'm even doing in this group at the same time as them. But you know how we would fix that? We would connect those two. So I would say to the person that was more advanced, hey, Susie, you know, here's Jenny. You know, it's her first time in the gym in a while, but she lives in your neighborhood, right, by the way. And you'd be like, oh, really? Where do you live? Front of the neighborhood? Oh, yeah. And then their kids knew each other. Oh, that's awesome, right? And then I would, you know, facilitate the conversation, the relationship. And then all of a sudden, like, you know, Susie, who's really fit, was an advocate for Jenny. Like, she was like a partner for her almost. Like, she was excited to see her in the gym. And she was actually as motivated by the effort from the person starting her fitness journey as the person starting was by looking at where she could end up if she worked out for the next 10 years, whatever that may be, right? And then guess what? The next time, you know, Jenny came in, who's waiting to say hello? Susie Q, right? And would be like, hey, what's up? You know, where were you last week? I didn't miss you. And all of a sudden, all that bullshit and all that internal conversation and negativity goes away. And you've got what you would see outside in does not look like a perfect match. You got a super fit, you know, gym hound with somebody who is not a gym person, is not very self-confident about their presence in a gym. And all of a sudden they're besties and they're hanging out. And guess what? They rub off on each other, right? The very fit person's motivated by the other, and the other person's like, you know what, I'm going to adopt some of her habits. Like, she doesn't hate me. She's not judging me. She's actually super cool. She's on my team. This is the team effort thing, right? And so, but the thing is, and I want everybody to hear this, that doesn't happen by accident. You have to introduce them, and you have to like point out those commonalities, like you live in the same neighborhood, right? Whatever those things are. And I'm sure you probably have more examples of that.
No, I mean, we've baked all this in. This is taught. These are, you know, our 7 core tenets. This is literally the second one, is making introductions, and that's introductions, right? What you just said. We have a new person coming in. Make sure to introduce them to the group, obviously, to letting them know they're new. But we also do what you said, where it's like make that one person who's been there a while like a ambassador or advocate. Be like, hey, this is Rick. I don't know if you've ever met him before. It's his first day. Just make sure guide him through the warm up or hang out with you. Make sure he's cool, and that empowers the person that's already a gym member. They feel even cooler, more proud of where they're at, right? And they become that bigger raving fan.
Yeah, it is an interesting dynamic how you would think, well, they don't want to help out, you know. And I've literally had coaches say that, well, my clients aren't going to help somebody else out. It's all about them. I'm like, you'd be surprised. You're not facilitating it in the right way, because if you are, and you're doing that every single time, you'll find that then your clients start doing it on their own, right? Yep. And then now you're cooking with oil. Now you've got a great culture where when someone new is in there, they immediately approach them and start talking to them without you having to prompt them, because they just understand this is the way the culture is. And by the way, it makes them, to your point, it makes them feel really good to help someone else, right? It's motivating for them as well. I also used to tell related to this, when I first started doing jiu-jitsu, I went into this gym and, you know, I had done like some boxing and I had done some Thai boxing at the same gym, but I'd never been to jiu-jitsu, and I never wrestled. I wrestled like for 1 year, but I wasn't very good at it. And certainly it had been a long time ago. So I go in there and I'm wearing my bright white jammies with my white belt, looking like a nerd, you know. And listen, you got to be willing to suck, especially in a sport like that. You just got to eat the biggest humble pie ever. And I'm looking around the room, and there's all these different colored belts and all these rocked up dudes with neck tats. And that was back when this gym had a fight team. And I was like, oh no, this is going to be awful. And every single guy in the gym came over, and no matter how big and scary they looked or whatever, how, you know, looked like dog had been chewing on their ears or whatever, they were like, hey, what's your name? Oh, great to meet you, man. Yeah, you come in here for a Thai boxing. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, yeah, I've sparred with you before. That's cool. They're like, oh, you're going to love it, man. It's so great. Like, it's such a great sport. You're going to learn so much. Just stick with it. You know, it's going to be tough, but just stick with it. And all of those like weird fears that I had, which would be very close parallel to what that person that first comes into the gym is feeling like, right? I'm feeling like everybody in there is looking at me like, look at this friggin' noob. I'm going to choke his neck right off his head, you know? It's like they're probably feeling something similar to that. And they did actually choke me out with every
5 minutes later. They're just killing you.
Awful. Like you're drowning.
You're doing great, buddy.
Yeah. That's exactly what it's like. I'm like, I didn't know I could be choked with my own pant leg, but apparently I can. Right? Yeah.
Is that my arm or your arm?
Right.
Whose arm is that?
That's my foot. That's my foot in my mouth. Oh, it was crazy. So, but they all did it with a smile, and like that's the reality of it. Same thing, like working out. It's going to suck if you haven't worked out in 20 years and you're 50 pounds overweight. But
how long would you have stayed there if that didn't happen? Nobody talked to you, and all you did was walked in there and just got pounded.
Yeah, like had I walked in, no one introduced themselves. Right. They all eyeballed me in a weird way, in this elitist way, and then just choked the shit out of me and didn't talk to me after. It probably,
you may have lasted. You're a little different.
I would have lasted because I understood what I was getting into, and I'd already talked to people who were like, oh, okay, it's going to be horrible for you at first. And it was, but I tell you what, it did make a big difference. And I always use that example because that's very similar. Like, how long would someone last in your gym if they came in, got their ass handed to them on the first day? No one really said, oh, hey, it's going to be this way. All the other members stayed amongst themselves, never talked to the newbie, right? You're going to churn a lot of people out if you do that.
It's a terrible experience.
Terrible. And so, working out for the first time in 20 years, can you imagine? If I take 2 weeks off and work out, I hate it. I can't imagine coming back. Like, it's so unbelievably hard to start something difficult like that. And so you should be championing the shit out of those people. And I know most people listening to this are doing that, but you've got to get your members doing it and bring all those weird barriers and everything down. It's very easy to do with a group of 6. It's also very easy to set that precedent. I later found out at this jiu-jitsu gym that if they don't introduce themselves, they have to deal with the owner, who's like this original Gracie jiu-jitsu black belt, just a complete badass. So he makes them do it. So it's just a standard set. And so I was like,
fight him if you don't do it?
Pretty much. Because he told me later, he's like, yeah, that's the expectation. Then when I was there for a while, I would do it. And
everybody's like, immediately when somebody walks in the door.
Yeah, exactly.
It was out of fear.
It was out of fear. But who cares? Like, it made me feel good, and I stuck around. And so that's really the key is that those people stick around. So
yeah, and just to add on that real quick, that's just introductions. You should always be facilitating this. You should always be doing this, Matt. We run 6-person small groups. We're always trying to find common ground between people in the groups, things that they do. Maybe
give me some examples, so just to help some of the coaches out that are listening.
You've kind of hit on some of them. Where you live, maybe you're both tennis players, maybe you're both golfers. just connecting anything to get people.
You like the same college football team.
Right. Oh, yeah, Rick guy, he's an LSU fan. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Those small things, you do them all the time because anybody that's done small group training understands that you're better off when the clients are talking to each other.
Right.
So it gives you time to bounce around and coach. You never want to be stuck in a conversation. So it's almost like survival a little bit, but it creates such a better experience for everybody. It's fun. You're laughing. At no time do you want 4 people, 5 people, 6 people just standing by themselves, not saying anything. How awkward is that?
Super awkward. And
I've seen it.
You do see it in some places.
It hurts, doesn't it? You're
it just feels gross. You're right. You just want to run over there and save the day. It's like, gosh, like build
everybody.
It's okay. You're going to be friends. I promise. But you've got to, as the coach or the owner or whatever, you have to facilitate that, and you have to be cognizant of it at every moment. And isn't this the same as the second point that we made? Isn't that a pole in the ground if you got to meet somebody at your gym and kind of rebel rouse a little bit and pick on each other or have fun or learn that you had common ground or you went to the same church or whatever that thing is? In our model, we purposely have less than 150 people so you can have meaningful relationships with everyone. If you know everyone and you know about them and their hobbies and their families and where they're from and everything about them, it would be very easy for you to connect them. And if you don't, it's like, come on, man, what you doing? So I would say that may be the most important one and may handle some of the others. But I hope that helps you guys. So Matt, just reiterate the 3 that we came up with.
Yeah, so the first one was expectations.
I thought it was foundations.
Or foundations or building value, whatever you want to use there. Number 2 was poles in the ground. So always looking for wins, physical touch, just all the 7-court tennis. And the last one, common ground, community. That's just how you build an awesome culture. And you imagine what you said, your community, everybody starts doing all those things for each other, uplifting each other. That's what happens right at the end of the day.
Yeah, one more example on that because it gets me excited because this is and I will tell you as an owner. So if you're thinking about becoming an Alloy franchisee, this is the thing that I hear people telling me that they want. Like, I want to help my community. I want to build a community. It's like, well, by the way, but we have soft touch stuff built into the programs. This is how you do it. It doesn't happen by accident. You go out there and you make these connections, right? And you introduce these folks and you find these commonalities and you force it and you do that for a while. And then when you get these clients that stay 3 years, they take over and it does start to happen on its own, but it's not going to happen by accident, right? We had a guy that was in town. He was a franchise candidate. And because our culture here at our original gym is so much of what you're mentioning, that we had a guy that had been here like 5 years, I think, training. And the guy came into town, we met, he's a big hedge fund manager for a while, big bucks. He wanted to do a couple states or whatever. We ended up not doing it because it was like too big, too fast because it was early innings for us. But I think you took him through as an induction. You introduced him to folks. We threw him in the workout. And he's a young guy, good-looking guy. I forgot who he looked like. He looked like, I don't follow tennis, but he looked like one of the professional tennis players. And it turns out his hobby is tennis. And so one of our customers was like, you look exactly like, and whoever it was, let's just say it's Nadal or something. It wasn't, but say it was him. And then he just called him Nadal the rest of the time. Come on, Nadal, get with it over there, you know. Right. But like he really liked that, you could tell. And this wasn't some, dude who didn't have, he wasn't low self-esteem guy. He's an alpha male all the way.
Right.
It still made him feel good that his hobby is tennis. And he's being called like a guy that is one of his tennis idols, right, the whole time. And that was all driven by a guy who'd been here 5 years who knows that's just the way we do things, right? And this guy, by the way, has had the same thing happen. We had somebody else visit, and he was saying, I want to be fit, but I don't want to be too fit. He's like that guy, like more of like I want to look like a double agent, like I could kill somebody, like a Jason Bourne kind of guy, but not too jacked. I'm like, that guy? Because I know this guy, and we always bust his butt, He was like, yeah. So I had to go tell him, I'm like, hey, this guy thinks you look like Jason Bourne. He's like, that's right. He's like, don't forget it. I can kill you. So now when I see him, I'm like, what's up, Jason Bourne? But I mean, that's a pull, right? That's something that makes people feel good. It's like, hey, my gym, he's home later telling his wife he thinks he's a complete idiot like mine does. And he's like, at my gym, they think I'm Jason Bourne. She's like, whatever. And they probably tease each other. But dude, I know that you guys that have good cultures and you're in the industry, you listen to this stuff and you're thinking like, well, this is so easy. But I'll tell you, it's not as consistently done as you might think. And I'll tell you that from working with 2,500 gyms worldwide and now getting into franchising, it's going to have to be the culture of our brand in every one of our locations. So we're spending a lot of time coaching it. I hope it helps you guys. Matt, that's great feedback, dude. And that's all I've got for you. We'll catch you next time.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks.